Okay, good morning, all wonderful people here. A warm welcome from Human Resource Federation of India family. I'm Ankita Rudra. I welcome you, all the participants, and our wonderful guest and the co-speaker today. I would like to thank Sharp HRD Services for supporting us in this learning journey and Mr. Vinod Dholap. Now, today's learning journey is yet another interesting one with the topic of HR of tomorrow. Since there is so much of an ambiguity post-pandemic or even before that regarding the space of HR, people are talking about different kind of a disruption and all. It is a wonderful opportunity and we are delighted to welcome you, Mr. Krish Shankar, with us in this forum, the Group HR Head for Infosys, in conversation with our very own family member, Sahil Nayar, an HR Evangelist. Over to you, Sahil, and we are really looking forward to this learning journey. Thank you.
Superb. Thanks so much, Ankita. I hope I'm audible, visible, and you can see Krish as well. And Krish, if you can do a quick sound check from your end.
Yeah. Hello, good morning, everybody. Pleasure to be here.
Lovely.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, yeah.
Okay, so Krish, you've just come back from Tech HR and you've been globe-trotting, you've been writing books, you've been traveling, and of course, you've been creating history at Infosys. So I think over the next 45 to 50 minutes, what we're going to do is, interestingly, we have the fire behind us and there's a lot of fire within us as well. So we'll try and have a fireside chat and we're anyway twinning in blue. So let's bleed blue as we have this conversation. And maybe we're going to structure this in a manner, Krish, where we're going to talk about Kal, Aaj, or Kal, right? It's the past, it's the present, and of course, nothing better than looking into the future alongside with you. I think, Krish, we've debated so much about the pandemic and about things that have happened and all that we've done. So we won't spend too much time talking about the pandemic. But I think one thing that the pandemic has definitely left us with is change is surely a constant. And it's a constant like never before. And therefore, given that change is everywhere and it is accelerating at a pace like never before, what are your opening thoughts on the subject of change? And I know you've written a little bit about it in your book as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what does change mean to you? And more importantly, for all the professionals on this call, the HR professionals, what does it mean for them in their day-to-day jobs?
Okay, good morning, everybody, and morning, Sahil and Rosab. Pleasure to be here. I think I spoke with the HR Federation maybe just at the onset of pandemic. It's been almost 2.5 years, but good to be back here, right? Sharing thoughts with all of you. I think, as you said, Sahil, when we look at the pandemic, I think it has shown us that there are many things. So we always had change, which was like a continuum, right? We always had like technology change is one change, which has been kind of eating away automation, new technology and its impact. But pandemic also gave us one kind of a big change. It is like a change which was like a revolutionary change. And what it made us also realize that as organizations, we've got to be prepared for this revolutionary change. That it will happen. How do you prepare for it? So I think some companies have done well, but I think what we all learned is the remarkable adaptability and flexibility of people. But I think clearly therefore, when we look at it, there is change across three kind of vectors that I can talk. One is these kind of events like the pandemic, something which will completely change the way business is being done. You got to be ready for it. You got to have the mindset to adapt and move around. So that's one. Second is the change which is continuing, which is like routinely disrupting things, which is there is change through technology. There is change in various things like, preferences of consumers. And therefore there is slowly, for example, the kind of work that we were doing in HR, let's say 10 years back, what we're doing now has changed thanks to various things, technology, how we have organized, etc. And the third change is the change in people. That is the third change, which I think in HR, we've got to be much more looking at, and saying, okay, what is it? Now, post-pandemic, you see that when you look at people, I think there are certain things that people are changing. This flexibility and remote working. we had it, but nobody used it in the past. I mean, in Infosys, we could allow 9 days, but hardly people used it because of various constraints. But now it's completely shifted, and now everybody wants that, and that becomes a clear part of your value proposition. Wellness, focus on wellness and well-being has become another big thing because of many issues that we have seen around here. Yeah, diversity and inclusion has really taken a big thing over the last 2-3 years, accelerated by the pandemic. So clearly, and we've seen, especially in the last year or so, huge amount of demand for talent, and therefore that has led to high attrition, etc. So therefore there is a change in employee preferences. What they feel is their kind of thing is changed, and that's a third change that we should be looking at. So yeah, I think in HR, what I believe is we have to be at the front of change. We got to be looking at this change, because if you look at any company, they will not change some of the big processes easily. For example, sales won't change their processes easily, or the way you do manufacturing. But HR is where innovation can come in. HR is where change can actually come in. So I think that's one role that we as HR people can do. Understand what's happening, what is changing in people, what is changing, and how should we be ready for that.
Sure.
It's a long thing, but then maybe we can go, because there are certain changes we can get into deeper things about. There are changes in career, there are changes in how we think. So I'll come to that later, but I just thought I'll give you a quick overview on the types of change that we're dealing with.
I think these are superb opening remarks, Krish, because you've spoken about the macroeconomic situation. You've spoken about external factors that induce change. But let's bring it down to the level of an employee, right? And how is it that if I as Sahil, or if I as Krish, or if I as Uma Shankar or Mahendra, who's on video, wants to really change, how do I, bring myself and make myself as agile? And I'm struggling to find the right words, because you can imagine how difficult change is, right? Because change is not just about changing a process. It's about people, it's about emotions, it's about change management. And at the bottom of it all, it's about that fear as well, saying, am I relevant? Because things are changing so fast. And if I'm not going to change, maybe I won't remain relevant. So Krish, at the bottom of the pyramid, bringing it down to the level of an individual, if you had to give an advice to a young 20-year-old to say, change is happening and you need to change, and maybe 20-year-old is not the right example, maybe it's a 60-year-old who wants to continue being in the workforce for the next 20 years because the individual thinks I'm fit and fine, my brain is working healthy, why do I need to retire, right? So what would be your counsel to different personas as far as embracing change is concerned?
Yeah. No, I think firstly, change is a mindset. I think we've been changing ourselves. Yeah. There's this Harvard professor called Brad Gilbert. He came up with this thing called end of history illusion. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have heard it, but it's a very nice concept. All of us think that while we have changed so much, we think we're not going to change much in the next few years, next 20 years. In our own minds, we think that this is it. I'm not going to change too much. But just look at 5 years back. Look at what we did. We've changed, right? So I think in our minds, there is always a feeling that, I don't think I'm going to change much from now. And you plan everything based on that. Your likes, your dislikes, where you want to stay, what you want to do. You plan saying that you're not going to change. But change happens and we all change. Yeah. So therefore, there is this natural process that is there. So change, firstly, is a question of mindset. I think we in HR, because of so much change happening around, all the change that I spoke about, changes in what people want, changes in business and the kind of economics, changes through big thing, we want to be ready to adapt and learn the change. Yeah. So that's firstly, it's a mindset saying change is there. We have changed so much. We will continue to change in the future. So that's the first one. I think the second thing is what comes in the way of change for us. I think sometimes we are not open to experiences. Yeah. So I think as HR people, we should say, listen, I want to experience some change, lead change, do something new, pick up something new, read something new. So keep on doing something which is, unless you are experiencing some change, you won't grow. So therefore, I think we got to step into it. I think there's a simple framework I have, which is really when I look at change, and a lot of change that for us will come in what we do. We can read and all of that. That's a small part, but what we do. I think one of the things is I have a concept called AOC. Now,
AOC.
AOC. AOC. I think
okay.
Triangle of A, O, and C. What is A? A is our aspiration. Yeah. I think we all have to have some kind of an aspiration, some kind of a purpose, whatever it is, There's something for your company, your career, but also something for yourself, what you want to do, what impact you want to have on people. So have some kind of a aspiration. So that's the first part. The second part, O, is look for opportunities. So O is all about opportunities, and opportunities are like networking, like this, like talk to people, learn, connect with others, connect with mentors, talk to people to see what are the new things that are coming. So you expand your opportunities. And those opportunities will give you leads to more change and more things. So look for how can I expand my opportunities. And the third one is capabilities, C. And that is where you start building your own capabilities. You can do it by doing newer roles. You can do it by doing projects, short term, something here and there, learning something. So you build that. So I think if we can keep this within our own thing, you have some kind of an aspiration or an ambition, not only for your career, but also personally, what are the things you would like to do? Increase your opportunities. I think those opportunities lead to learning. So look for what kind of opportunities you want. Don't meet the people you always been meeting. Go and meet some people in the tech sector. So I think it expands that. Third is continue to build your capability, small things that we can do. So change is a mindset. Think of these three things. And I think that will help us stay on the learning curve ahead of change.
Beautiful. So you've actually introduced a new concept and a new theory in front of us, which is the AOC model, which is aspirations. You look at opportunities and then, of course, build capability to rise and fulfill those ambitions. Beautiful. But Krish, let's address the naysayers in the room, right? There are a lot of people who are the pessimists who look at life very differently. And they believe that, Krish, this is all old wine in a new bottle. 30 years, 50 years back, we used to do recruitment. We still do recruitment. We used to do hiring, firing, employee life cycle, HR business partnering, centers of excellence. You've just given new names over the years, but we're still doing the same job, right? And fundamentally, therefore, what is changing? Because, of course, you may say, yeah, of course, there's technology. Fair, accepted. But otherwise, has the core role of HR over the last couple of decades that you've been seeing the workforce, the workplace, and the work that we do, has the core of HR fundamentally changed, or is it just old wine in a new bottle with a little dash of technology, a little dash of AI, a little bit of lime with machine learning?
No, I think, I started working in 1984. Yeah, so it's almost 38 years. That was like long, long back.
Even before I was born.
Yeah. People can't believe that I've been working for now 38 years.
And yet you look younger than most of us. So what's the secret? We're going to come to that in a bit, but we'll take that in the rapid fire.
Yeah. I worked in manufacturing for 20 years in Unilever, Hindustan Lever, Unilever and Unilever. Then I was in Airtel for 7 years, now Infosys for 7. I've seen 3 different industries, completely different industries. But the point is, what HR was doing then to now has completely changed. Just a small example. When I was in Levers in 1990, I joined Levers in 86, and over time, even till 1996, Levers did not have this whole concept of HR. We just had 3 people called management development. There was a head of management development, there was a recruitment manager, there is a selection manager. So that's it. Otherwise, it was all IR managers sitting in the factories. That's all they were doing. From that time, 95 to now, the world has changed. While IR is there, HR has become, we now have HR managers for sales. We've got HR manager for each of the businesses. We have people. So, the kind of work that we do is completely changed. So, and I can see that, continuing over what we did in Airtel and now, HR has changed over time. So what has changed? I think the way HR can contribute to the business has increased tremendously. In the past, HR was quite administrative. You said focus on hiring, managing admin, etc. But IR especially. But now I think every board, every management team, HR is a key part. We talk about people, we talk about engagement, we talk about key talent. So there is a lot of focus on that, succession planning. So there is clearly a big thing, and every board is taking interest in that. So that's the first step. Number two, the way HR is organized has also changed from, strong IR oriented, admin oriented. Now we've got, and this organization keeps increasing. Technology has come in and HR has really made a big thing. Third, I think why HR has also become important is people's expectations are also changing regularly. I think this part about in the past, people had less options, so you didn't have to really address those options. Now, I think people's expectations are changing. Every 5 years, the kind of people who work in an organization changes. If you look at any of the IT company, if you take even an attrition of about 20%, now it's in that high range, you take and the kind of new people we are adding, in 3 to 5 years, it's almost 50% of the people are new. What they expect is completely new. To respond to it, what you do is where HR has to play a role in it. Yeah. And that becomes very important. So therefore, these are areas where HR has really come together. And the last point I want to talk here, why HR is important, is culture. Yeah? And I think over time, we found that culture is an important part where HR can make a difference. And there are two things to do with culture. Let me try. One is the general human element of culture, like respect, inclusion. These are the general human elements that every company wants. Yeah. No company will say, listen, I don't want people to respect each other. I don't want collaboration. They all want it. So that's a part that every company wants. But there is a second part, which is what is strategic, which will help the company grow or become better or become unique. For example, kind of an Apple may say it's all about innovation. Yeah. For example, IT services like ours will say it's all about collaboration and learning, because those are very important to us. So you build a culture of that. So you build something which is unique and strategic to the organization. And this building of culture is where HR plays a role. Culture is built by three key things. One is by leaders. Number two is by routines, rituals, routines that we do.
Sure.
And three is by incentives. What we recognize, what we reward, that's how we build culture. And HR has a key role in all of this, talking about leaders, influencing leaders, thinking about incentives, planning, doing that, ensuring that the right routines are there, and that helps. So I think this is how I've seen change. So HR's role has become important. Role of culture has become important. How we can influence culture is also becoming critical. And I think companies at the board, I think the HR leaders are quite strategic. They talk business, so they're very aligned to the business, which was not there 20 years back. So things have changed quite a lot. I think this continuum will continue.
No, absolutely. And I think Sanjay Sharma on the chat alludes to what you say, and of course agrees that culture is built by leaders, and of course it starts from the top. So I think while we've really laid out, Krish, what has changed, to my mind, one thing has fundamentally not changed, which is the need for HR people to always ask for a seat at the table, right? I've been hearing this from the time I've been born, saying, when will HR get a seat at the table? Oh, HR has already got a seat at the table. But you know what? HR has not been able to sustain their seat at the table. And so many conversations in that space. Let's spend some time, Krish, talking about value creation. I think, having the first foot in the door is always very easy. But to ensure that you remain in the room, and remain in the room not because somebody wants you to be there, but because of the value that you add as a strategic leader, talking about people, driving the people agenda. What are your thoughts on how HR professionals can actually create value, not just for themselves and their teams, but for the organization at large and the communities at large?
Sahil, this is a big question. This is giving me a whole session on what is HR about. And that's like going to be a long thing.
Top 10 bullet points, whatever comes to your mind.
No, I think, I don't know, maybe couple of thoughts, because, the book I wrote recently, I don't know if maybe some of you have read it. If not, maybe you guys should read it. The book is called Catalyze. I think it is about some of this. Firstly, what is value creation? Yeah, and what are the elements of value creation? How it is changing? And when I look at it, and when you look at the key things, there are three key elements of value creation that is there, which are now much more sustainable than in the past. In the past, it was finance, it was brands, etc., etc. Right? I think finance anybody can get. As long as you have a great idea, you can get a venture capital, banks are there, you can get money. Brands, those days, building a brand and distribution was very difficult. But now with e-commerce, digital, that's also, social media, building a brand is not that difficult. You can get access much more. So those have all gone. So what is really there? I think clearly three key things, which are sources of value creation. Number one is your talent, the kind of talent you have and their capabilities. Talent, I just don't mean, but their unique capabilities. And that's where HR helps build those capabilities. The second is culture. The culture, and again, the culture that distinguishes you, culture that helps you be, unique in the industry, in the market. Number three is your reputation as a company. And the reputation really has a lot of goodwill effect, which is like the overall image of the company always has. So these are the key things which over time have been found to be difficult to build. Now, and that's where HR comes. HR plays with all of these, in terms of how we can do. Now, so there are, and to build this, you can really, any company can ask saying, what are the key outcomes? How do I build this? And I think there are very simple things. You can first start with saying, okay, how do I build the base for reputation? That means, how do I build a fair and inclusive process in the company? So that's your first base. I think if you have that, then you get the right culture, you get the right talent. So that's there. Then you start saying, okay, how do I build the right cost structure, in the organization? What are the levers for thinking about the right cost structure? Whether it's a kind of people, salary, organization, various levers that you have. Then you can say, how do I attract and retain my key talent? What can I do? What kind of talent do I need? How do I define talent? How do I bring? Then it's about, how do I make this talent learn continuously? How do I provide them the kind of opportunities to keep learning? The strategic learning that's needed, as well as routine. So how do I do that? Then I think there are other things like, how do I continue to build the right culture, which is needed for business? Then you can go into, how do I build my leaders? And lastly, it's all about, how do I continue to engage them? So there are 8 to 10, I would say, key outcomes that if we as HR do, we can help build in this value creation.
Sure.
And I think one of the thoughts that I had, and one of the learning I had, Sahil, is this. Sometimes HR becomes too much siloed. We've been much about recruitment. Every company, large companies, the silos are pretty strong. And once I attended a session by this professor called Clayton Christensen. He died recently. He was a professor of Harvard. He wrote a lot of books. One of them was The Innovator's Dilemma, etc. So he's written books on strategy and innovation. And he's also written a book, something on how do you achieve success in life. It's a nice book written. So he came up with a nice example and a thought called jobs to be done. So, and he gives a nice example in his, I heard it from him, but you can read it in his book also, in the sense that there was a quick service restaurant. There was like one of those fast food restaurants. They were introducing a thick shake, milkshake, kind of a thing. And they were saying, who will eat it and who will consume it? And they felt that it will be normally taken by children who come back from school, maybe 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon. And they send their market research team to, see what it is. So they launched it. They started checking who's using it, what is, etc., and what kind of flavors the children will need. And this market research team went and they found something surprising. They found that this was not being sold at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. They found that children were not buying it. They found that it was bought in the morning between 8 and 9. And it was bought by commuters, people who are driving cars going to work. They wanted some kind of breakfast. They also wanted breakfast, something filling. And they also wanted something they can have while driving.
Easy to have,
Quick service restaurant. They bought this thick shake and they were driving. So what it did a very different job for them, So therefore, he came up with this concept of think about what jobs you want to get done. I think that's the same concept I thought. And in my book, I've talked about it. Because even in HR, you do this analysis and say, okay, what job you need to get done to create your value? And it'll vary for different organizations at different times. Once you decide what jobs to get done, what outcome you need, then you can plan how you need to do that. So I think that's where HR can, to your question, HR has 3 key levers for creating value: talent, culture, and reputation. I think that's where we can build the whole base for it, through equity, fairness, culture, right talent, and getting the talent to continuously learn. So all of that. And always, I think for us in HR, one lesson is look at what is the outcome that's needed, what jobs we need to get done to achieve the result, and then let's plan that.
Lovely. So since you've spoken of so many professors, let me do a quick recap. You taught us AOC, correct? That was the first one. And now this is TCR, right? AOC, what was AOC? If you can help us remember, Krish.
A was aspiration, opportunity,
capability.
It's a triangle. All 3 are linked to each other.
Absolutely. Aspiration, opportunity, capability. And this one was TCR.
These are the 3 elements of value creation, which is number talent, culture, and reputation. So again,
and reputation. Brilliant.
Talent, TCR, talent, culture, and reputation.
Talent, culture, and reputation. So all the people who've been asking these questions on the chat, you've got your full forms there. The triangle is AOC, and then there is TCR, talent, culture, and reputation. I think, Krish, we've been cruising very beautifully at 35,000 feet. There's no turbulence. We've been having a great conversation. Let me now bring the plane on the tarmac, right? And when the rubber hits the road is when you actually know whether you've had a smooth landing or not. Let's break this down to say, if you're a manager L&D, right? For a mid-size organization with 4,000 or 5,000 people, what would it mean for a manager L&D to drive people-related outcomes that would really create value for that L&D function, right? Because all of this is great, right? Reputation, leaders, culture. For many, it may sound very fuzzy. For some, it may say, wow, Krish is saying all the right things. I'm inspired to write my next book. But for the guy, the practitioner out there who needs to go back to office on a Monday and listen to Krish's recording and say, wow, I heard something from him, but these are the 5 things that I can do on a Monday morning when I have my team huddle at 10 a.m. What are those things that a manager L&D can actually do with his or her team to implement aspects that create value for his or her function within L&D with a 5-member team supporting a 4,000 or 5,000 employee base organization? Sorry, but I'm getting granular transaction. I think it's important.
Yeah, you're right. I think thinking about it in that way is very important. Well, this is a very key thing. So what is the outcome we need? You got to be clear. You want to improve the capability of your organization. Yeah, so that's the outcome you need. This L&D function role is saying, I want to improve the capability of the organization. Then the next question is, what is this capability I need to do? What improvement? Where do I want to see this improvement? And that's where I always, and this is somewhere I used when I was in Airtel, a very simple framework, which I continue to use. And it's a 2x2 matrix again. It's saying what is needed for you and what is organization driven. Yeah, what is individual driven and organization driven. And today and tomorrow for the future, today and for the future. So it's like a 4-box.
So on the x-axis, you have today, tomorrow.
Yeah, for example, x-axis, it is today and tomorrow. You can say today and for the future. Individual-led and organization-led. So you got to what is needed for the individual and what is needed for the other. So you get a 4-box kind of a thing. Yeah. Now, what is organization-led thing? That is where L&D team should say, listen, what capability does my organization need to build? Which is essential. You got to prioritize. You talk to your teams, and it may be, I'm taking, for example, GE those days when Jack Welch was there, said, I want to build 6 Sigma capability across the company. Yeah. If you look at any of the FMCG companies, they say, listen, my capability is a lot about digital marketing. I want digital awareness amongst all my people. I want to do more innovation, so capability for it. That's what most FMCG companies do. So therefore, every company may take 1 or 2 areas, not more, then you'll be all over the place. But take 2 areas where you want to build organization capability. Yeah, so that's the first one. Now, once you've decided that, you say, okay, to do that, what is it that I need to do now? No, and what is it that we need to do in the future? So you have a roadmap about it. So that's it. Six Sigma. These are the things I will do. These are the needs I'll build, etc. Now let's come to the individual. Now you also say, listen, I need something for the individuals for them to improve. What is it? And therefore you give there a framework. And now and for the future is key things that you think are important for success. Maybe there are areas that you have decided in your organization and to say, listen, I need my people to become, let's say, better in understanding digital, or I need my people to become better in becoming more collaborative. And for the future is for your high potential, for your future leaders. What do I need? So you identify what are those 2 or 3 things. So I think that box is something you need to get as a L&D leader about what capability do I need to build 3 years from now. What do I want to see in the organization? Yes, that map is the first step. Once you've built it, then you say, how do I now go about it? Yeah. And this is where there are lots of new changes that we got to do. Yeah. I think a lot of learning, neuroscience has come in, how people learn, the role of emotions in learning, the role of hands-on learning, how it improves, gamification overhyped, but some parts it helps, So I think you got to bring some of those new learning technology and build your thing, I feel learning, when I look at it in the past, I think many of the HR people would know, we said 70% of learning comes from on the job, what you do. 20% comes from the others you meet, and 10% comes from courses, etc. I think that's changing a little bit because of so much change around. We have to also bring in new thinking also, because in the past it was okay, but in a more volatile, more new things coming, you got to change that a bit. I think this learning courses will be at least 20% because all of us have to learn, attend, understand a little more analytics, whatever it is, build in new from those things.
Right.
Learning from others is 30%. That also increased because you got to network a lot more. Learning on the job is there, still big one, 50%, but is not as big as the others. So I think we have to expand the scope of learning. So learning, you can build those 3 elements and simple, what kind of programs you need, what kind of networks you will create, what kind of things. I think then you got to ensure that there is the right culture for learning. You have leaders who are talking about it. You link it to performance, you link it to people doing it, monitor it. Then that's the part of, ensuring the execution of learning, and that needs some technology. It needs leaders' commitment, and it needs a measure of process where you keep checking how things are going and, looking at it. I think that's probably it. So yeah, I tried to give a simple thing to 3 or 4 steps. It sounds easy. I think it's hard to get done because there are so many challenges that we all have. But I thought I'll give you a kind of a quick overview of what I think an L&D person should do.
No, I think, Krish, that's very, very nice because as I was patiently listening to you, going through the entire answer, I was just thinking in my head that you have a very beautiful balance between academia and being a practitioner. Many a times practitioners have been often told that, oh, you have a very academic bent of mind and this is all theory, right? In the practical world, this doesn't work. And then on the other hand, you have practitioners who are industry experts who don't really believe as much in academia or research or thought leadership. And they're just, ye chalta hai, kaam aise hota hai, aise karo. But I think the way you balance the two has been very beautiful. So let's really change gears here and look at it from a perspective of saying these 2x2 models, these metrics are very nice, right? Because an academician sitting somewhere in Harvard is preparing these models. You read them in some beautiful books and you try and apply them. But a Krish going to work, a Sahil going to work, a Prakash, a Srinivasu going to work would typically have a good day at work, would have a bad day at work. Someone's spouse has yelled in the morning, you've got in. Maybe you've gone for that drive and you haven't got your thick shake because it's out of stock and you're feeling hungry and you haven't had a nice breakfast and you're groggy in the morning. What is the role of positive psychology in all of this? Because see, everywhere there is bad news happening, you're losing lives, the world is changing. Apart from Bangalore weather, the Bangalore traffic gets to you. It takes you 2 hours to cover 4 kilometers. So how is it that you use some of the principles of positive psychology to stay course, to stay focused, and maintain the fine balance between academia and a practitioner's view of getting things done at the workplace?
Well, frankly, I also got a bit into it in the pandemic. Earlier I used to read a bit, but I think when you saw through the pandemic, I think the first few months, I realized the power of this positive psychology. I also started reading a lot more, so let's say between March to September of last 2020. And I think what came out was how those elements have, and I've read a lot more research. I mean, for those who are interested, there is a professor called Martin Seligman. He's written various books. One is called Optimism, but he's got there is a positive psychology website in the University of Pennsylvania, Wharton. So go there. You get very good ideas, very good resources, etc. Or if you want a short thing, you can read my book, because that also has ideas there, which I've picked from many books. I think 3 or 4 books on positive psychology. One, I think, is Martin Seligman himself. One, there is Amy Edmondson, who talks about psychological safety. Carol Dweck, which is all about basically growth mindset. That's all about positive, thinking positive, optimism, that kind of a thing. So these are all the concepts. And there is this guy called, what's his name? DeGeno, who wrote the book on emotion success. It's also a very good book, understanding about emotions. So you can read these books. What I've done is, when I read all of those, I took some of them and kind of, tried to experiment at work, and I've put them and I've kind of summarized them in my book also. So what is positive psychology? It says that, listen, in the past, when we are looking at people, we say what is not working. And what is not working, changing that is much more difficult. Yeah. And therefore, look at the other route. Look at what is your strength, what is working. What you can leverage and work on it. That's number one. Number two, they've done various research, and they found that emotions are a great way, and we've kind of not looked at it, but emotions are a great way to get things done. For example, I'm taking a small thing, and this is what I experimented in a company like Airtel. When you need collaboration between 2 teams, let's say there is a marketing team and a customer service team, and they're doing a project, they always keep fighting, saying, they didn't give me this, I didn't, this is there, that is there, so that is there. Now, how do you create collaboration amongst them? I think the key thing was create 2 emotions there. First is, people should feel emotions of gratitude towards. So set up events where people are thankful for what others have done. There is a feeling of gratitude. And that means you have to talk about it, show what are the challenges, do that. Emotions of gratitude. Yeah. And second is emotion of compassion, saying, I know their challenges, what they're going through, and therefore. So if you have gratitude and compassion as emotions, then collaboration will automatically. Yeah, and that's very simple. So I think they use that, and their positive psychology is about how do you use these things and build on it. Similarly, happiness. There is a lady called Sonia, who's written many, many books. It's about very simple things. What are the steps to do increase your happiness, which you can and you can build in day-to-day work life. So I think what they've done is, this is all latest research, and I think we as HR can take all of those. And when you look at this pandemic, these last 2 years, I think getting these kind of positive things, emotions of gratitude. Say, for example, you want to create more feeling of positivity in your organization. Look at things. How do you create an emotion of gratitude and emotion of optimism? So that's it. And simple things you try and do, talk to leaders to do it, you will be able to do that. Positive psychology also comes in a lot in learning. What helped you put learning in individual
neuroscience around it, yeah.
Strength-based leadership. All these are areas that we can use. So
sure.
Again, lots there, but I think let's take smaller bits that we can use in our day-to-day work.
No, absolutely. I think, Krish, let's touch upon emotions. I think that's a very important aspect. And, let's bridge the gap between industry and academia. We've always studied the model of a leader is high on task orientation versus people orientation. It's always good to find the sweet spot, right? And now with things opening up and all of us going on vengeance travel, trying to do offsites, team bonding, getting together, where does one draw the line between what is professional and what is personal? Where does one draw the line between saying, I am hurt at work, but I will have a drink with you and then I will tell you personally how hurt I am? Where does one draw the line to say, this is a work boundary and this is a personal boundary? If I'm comfortable sharing with you, you can be my chuddy buddy outside of work, but at work, I will still have the same respect for you because you're my boss. I think people are grappling with this in a very significant manner because earlier it was very easy, right? Because geographically, we were tuned in our head to say 8 a.m., Sahil gets up, gets into the car, travels an hour. He has that 1 hour to listen to his music, have his thick shake. By the time he reaches office, he's in an office zone, quote unquote. And then when he leaves, more or less, he switches off. And then you're with family and you're doing family time. But here now with work from home, the maid hasn't come, the spouse is getting upset, you haven't done the dishes. Oh, but you can now start going back to work because Krish is saying, what's your come to work plan? And let's go back to work. And then how many days in a week do you go back to work? When you go back to work, the chores at home are still waiting for you. Emotions are running high. So many times we've really seen it that people have been brilliant on a 1 p.m. call. And when you get them back on a 1:30 p.m. call, they don't make sense anymore. And that is because at 1:25 p.m. when the call ended, between 1:25 and 1:30 p.m., something happened which didn't happen on camera, which happened in the house. And when that guy comes in on a 1:30 call, you're flabbergasted that this guy is my rock star. He makes a lot of sense. He says all the right things. And now suddenly on this call, he's gone berserk. So how does one manage all of this? Any kind of, I wouldn't say tips, but I would say any kind of thoughts or perspectives that you would have to gauge the fluctuation of emotions and how does one bring in semblance?
Yeah, no, I think there are many interesting thoughts here, but I think I just go quickly to the practical thing without some of the background behind it. See, I think what happens to us, how do you get emotions? Emotions are, they are like your bodily reactions, whatever it is, to something that's happened, to an event, some amount of whatever it is and how you feel about it. Yeah, so that's basically what emotion. They're actually a good feedback mechanism. So you got to understand that. It's not something to be afraid of, but it's a feedback mechanism that the body is telling you deep inside that this is what it is. So I think, what we've got to do as leaders is understand that a bit. Yeah. And I think when I was in Philips, we had a very interesting practice, which is about what we call as check-in. It was all about emotion. When we have a meeting, we say, okay, how are you? And we'll ask them, how are you feeling today? Talk about it. And also talk about anything that will make you not fully participate or not, anything that would come in the way of this. So we would get everybody to do that. And that was quite a nice thing, where people may or may not fully be open, but if one did, others would do it, and people will say, yeah, I'm feeling a little bit on tension today. My son is having his exam. I got this. So they'll talk about it. So I think just talking about it like that, this emotions check-in is a great way to really get people to come together. Yeah. I think leaders have to just do a little more of listening, be aware. And once people know that, listen, I've spoken about it, then I think they will calm down. Yeah. So I think, and every meeting start 5-10 minutes just by doing a little bit of banter, saying what has happened, anything that's there. So those kind of things really, help people discover, be at peace with their emotions. And then after that, they're pretty much okay to continue. So
Krish, how much of this listening is sensing and how much of this is intuition, right? I'm just trying to say that, while with your kind of experience, it may come very naturally to you and you will pick it up very quickly. If there is someone who's just spent a couple of years in HR and, wanting to build a career in HR, what would you recommend to a fresher or a newbie like that to say, these are the triggers that you should watch out for, or these are the aspects that you should pick on, or this is how you can improve your sensing or intuition? Any thoughts there?
Yeah. It's firstly, only these will come through experiences. Yeah. And for example, Daniel Goleman talks about EQ, right? What is EQ? EQ is just simple. Again, there is 2 by 2, but let me just put it in a very simple way. Firstly, it's got to understand your own emotions. Yeah. And it is also about understanding others' emotions. Yeah. So you got to practice it. Now I want to say, look at Sahil and say, okay, what are his emotions? Maybe there is something that I see in his face, something that I see in the way he talks, something. So you got to, over time, practice understanding the emotions that people may have. The second part of this whole thing is how do you manage your own emotions and how do you help others manage their emotions? That's four, again, 2x2. Understanding your emotions, understanding others' emotions, managing your emotions and helping manage others' emotions. That's all EQ is. Now it's about, and that means what? You got to practice. You got to, and if your mind says, okay, let me check what it is, you will do it, and I think we are all natural people, unless some of us are completely insensitive, but I think that's very, very small. All of us, once you're attuned, do that. So tips for you in your case is just, I would say, look for people, whatever, how they feel, how they talk. Those will give you clues about maybe is anything bothering them. Ask them, how are things and all that. So that way that will help you build rapport. You guys must have heard of this Johari window long, long back when you studied. And the more you talk about yourself, the more you will have others talk about you. So they feel that creates this, what they call a psychological safety, saying, listen, if I say something, it's not going to be used against me. That's very important. If you don't have that trust, then people will not tell you anything. So as leaders, as HR people, we got to build that safety, that trust. That listen, if I tell this person something, they will use it in the right way. They're not going to, so they're not going to talk about it. So we got to build that trust. That will make people more safe to talk about, look for the things. And then I think the emotion management stuff is, again, simple things that we can do.
Sure. I think, Krish, I don't know whether you've seen the movie Maine Pyar Kiya, but there's a very, very, a bird has come with a small note to me right now. And this note says, and this note is from one of the CEOs who's watching this session, saying, Krish and Sahil, you guys have spent the last 10 minutes talking about emotions, but I am a high taskmaster and I need to run this company. And emotions all said, fine, EQ important, done and dusted. What is the effectiveness quotient? What is the effectiveness equation? Because I need my organization to be effective. I am answerable to the board. I am answerable to the shareholders, and I need to deliver results quarter on quarter. So emotions sab theek hai. Krish, Sahil, bahut baatein ho gayi. Tell me now, how are you going to manage the effectiveness equation?
No, I think, see, if you look at the old style thing, people felt that, listen, if I'm not looking at people, it sounded like a trade-off between managing people and managing tasks. Yeah, that is what it is. But I think now people have realized that, listen, they're not two different things. They both have to come together. You got to manage tasks clearly, but you got to manage your people to help manage those tasks. Because if you don't do that, your tasks are not going to get done. Or if they'll get done once, and it won't get done again. People will leave, they'll get burnt out, etc., etc. In the past, when they didn't have an option, fine, but now they all have options. So I think to the CEO who wrote to you, I think we can tell him or her that, listen, there is, the only way to achieve tasks sustainably is to ensure that you look after people. Yeah? The only way to do that. And people are the ones who are going to achieve tasks. Tasks are not going to get done. Therefore, you set up your routines for getting tasks done. Similarly, you have to also set up your routines for managing people, for managing their emotions. Do both. I think both will have to work together. Nobody's saying that don't do a review of business. Nobody says that. You should do a regular review of business. But also while you're doing that, you also ensure that you're looking after the people and their emotions, and you're also checking on that. Keep both. And I think that's the only way that I think you can achieve your effectiveness quotient.
Got it. So when people attrite, Krish, and attrition happens, whose KRA is it? Is it only HR's KRA? Is it the line manager's KRA? Is it the culture's KRA? Is it the board's KRA? Is it the CEO's KRA? Who takes the responsibility for attrition?
Yeah, I think everybody has to. I think it's a thing for the company. Normally, the leaders should say, listen, what it is. And I think over time, it depends. There are different ways to look at why attrition is happening. And then there are, somebody takes greater responsibility. Yeah. If there is attrition happening while you say, listen, if I look at my EVP in terms of simple elements of career, compensation, I mean, there are 4 key things. When you look at what are the elements of a value proposition to employee? They need a great company or a great culture. They need great leaders or great managers. They need a great career, and they need great rewards. I think put all these 4 together, right? Now you can do an assessment saying, where are we on this? We've got maybe 1 or 2 of these. We don't have the other. Therefore, you got to start building that. And therefore, that team which is responsible for that takes greater thing. HR is like the sutradhar, HR is like somebody who's putting all this together. Because this needs leaders to come together. This needs companies' business plan to come together in terms of budgets, costs, whatever, what is your competitive thing. It needs HR processes to come together. So HR has to take an overall view and ownership around it. But we got to then, those 4 elements, see what it is. Is it due to people are leaving due to an internal push because the EVP is not being delivered, or due to an external demand because, like you've seen in tech industry, there's a huge demand. If so, what do you want to do? So I think we've got to just think about these various things and then start working on it. But HR probably takes a larger role in managing.
Sure. So Krish, we were obviously cruising at 35,000 feet. We are now 50 kilometers away from our destination, and everybody loves a before time arrival. So the countdown has started. We have 7 minutes to go to end this session on time. And I'm also cognizant that I would love to have a couple of questions coming in from the audience. We have very, very intelligent and smart people out there. So if you have any questions, guys, put them on the chat, and I'm going to keep reading them alongside as I finally take you to your destination safely with my Captain Krish and your flight attendant taking you back to your destination. I think, Krish, we're in an employees market. There's no taking away from that. And everyone has been talking about EX, right? Employee experience, employee experience. At the same time, there are people who are moonlighting. There are people who are gaslighting. There are people who have 6 offers with 4 laptops at home and jumping between laptop to laptop. And for them, money is the key because they're thinking, apna time aayega, apna time aa gaya hai, and now I can earn what I would have never thought of earning in the next 10 years. And therefore, money is key. Krish, where would you put your hand? Money or experience? And this is an or question, so don't give me an and.
Well, I think depends on which part of, let me try be philosophical here.
Hey, no, come on.
I think the early part of one's career, I would say it is experience. Okay. Because you're building that experience. So the early part of the career, I would say you focus on building your CV. Always look at the right experience. So that's number 1. Once you've got it, the later part of your career, money can be important. Yeah.
Krish, that is
not just one persona that we are there.
But that's such an irony, Krish. You passed out from XLRI. You very well know that when you go on campus, the day 0 slot is given to the company that pays the maximum, not to the company that has the best experience, right?
Yeah.
So how do you bridge the gap between academic
challenge
and
there? Yeah, the challenge there is people. It's all what people vote for the company, right? They're looking at compensation, experience, everything, and say, "I want to get this company there." But yeah, that way they vote for some companies which give more, and they think money is what it is. But there are a group of people who make that choice. There are again group of people who say, "Listen, this is what it is." Even not, this is what I would suggest. Even if, but listen, given this employee market, given that, see the other part about culture, most companies, large companies are similar, and there's nothing much to differentiate. Maybe in one area some companies better, in one area some is different. So they are in a way better. So just 1 second.
No worries.
So
you could see the beautiful Buddha right behind the moment you moved a bit.
So in a way, what I would say is this, in the sense that there is, think about young people now feel because there are so many options, money is important. Yeah. And I think that's the industry now. But if one were to look at building a long-term career, then I think experience, building the right CV for the first 10 years is probably critical. Of course, money is a hygiene factor. And then if they all find that the experience across the company is similar, then they'll go with money. So that's what it is. So I think
maybe Krish, I wasn't good enough in articulating my question. Let me try one more time. $100,000 on building an employer brand or $100,000 in giving ESOPs? Where would Krish tend towards?
I think longer term is building that employer brand. What is, see, I think Sahil, employer brand is not built on a PPT, right? It has to be built through actions. And one of those actions would be giving those ESOPs because you're building that employer brand. Yeah. One of those actions, because employer brand is you got to put a thing and say, okay, one of the elements of my brand to come alive is giving ESOPs or to give compensation. So thinking about that employer brand, where you want to be distinguishing yourself. And if you think that giving ESOPs is where I'm going to be distinguishing, then you should do it, because I think employer brand is a larger thing and ESOPs is just one part of it.
Now we know what makes Krish Shankar. You got the answer, ladies and gentlemen. It's about what you want to do, where you want to do, how you want to place it, and $100,000 goes in the direction. Beautiful. Krish, I think I want to touch one very important element, which I think we've missed so far, is the whole element of trust. And I think that has been so pivotal across generations that somewhere we have just taken it for granted that it is BAU, right? It's an element for us to exist. We've also seen a lot of people manipulating, playing around, looking at careers of people, looking at growth trajectories, and trust continues to remain a very, very important factor. Now, many people say that when you meet a person, seeing is believing. If you're in front of the person, you can develop trust faster. Some equate trust to time, right? What is your view on trust in a hybrid work environment where we are trying to engage gig workforce from across the world? Output is happening, delivery is happening, but still, there is that gut feeling to say, I don't trust this guy. I'm not sure whether he's on my side or he's on my competitor side because he's working for both of us, right? How do you bridge over the trust equation?
No, I think, trust is the bedrock or the basis of any exchange, right? As a world, we've become, business is based on an exchange. And that exchange, trust is the basic thing around it. And over time, I think trust has increased in the organization, everything, because, all this trust index that people do, they trust organizations more than they trust anything else, because, that's what, for doing business, trust is important, and once you trust something, you get a good result, then it builds. If you do something wrong, that trust is broken, then your business is gone. Yeah, I think common sense for somebody to have great business, for somebody to have a great career, trust is important. Yeah, I think that's the simple.
Yeah. I think Puneet is asking a similar question, Krish, on the chat to say, how do you measure a trust index in an organization, right? While we have great places to work and all of those things and various metrics, can you really say that organization A has a score of that on trust versus organization B? Or is it just a very fuzzy word like
it's a fuzzy thing, but trust means different things to different people. But I think there are 2 or 3 areas. One is trust within your team, your boss and your team. That's very important, because that's when the team works better. How much do you trust your boss, and how much do you trust your team? Second is how much you trust your organization and their leaders, because if they say something, do you believe it, what it is? So that's at the organization. And thirdly, trust is built around some of the things that your company does in terms of your ESG, your overall vision. That really is important too. So all these help build trust. You see organizations where there is a strong focus on ESG, strong focus on CSR. I think you'll see a greater amount of trust within that organization. So I think all those are there. And I think clearly at an employee level, it's about, do they trust their managers and their team? Do they kind of, how that's very important. And do they trust their leaders? I think these 2 are important for the employee side, because that's when we can look at it. And there are various measures of it, but in the end, the true measure is the outcome measures. How productive your team is, how low your attrition is, and how engaged your team are. All those are more important than whether it's just trust or anything. So we have to look
Absolutely.
at it.
I think HRFI is known for peer-to-peer learning, and Tamanna has asked a question on the chat, what is ESG? Can I draw the attention of all HRFI members who would love to answer that question for Tamanna on chat? And my last question to you, Krish. We started off with fire behind us and fire within our belly. But let me tell you, in the last 1 hour, the rapid fire that we had, I felt psychologically very safe having this conversation with you. I almost felt that you're like a buddy sitting next door who I could just ask questions to without any fear of thinking, oh, will Krish be judging me? Will he think that I'm trying to ask a question that's not appropriate? How does one create this psychologically safe environment at the workplace where I'm not worried that, oh, you know what, if I ask a question to my boss or my super boss or to my super boss in the absence of my boss in the room, I'm going to get perceived as someone, who is a smart aleck. How do I have that psychologically safe environment with the fire burning all around?
With the fire. No, I think each leader has to create that. I think it's about, listening, number one, listening in a non-judgmental way. And also ensuring there is an environment where people can raise questions and you can debate it without saying, why did you ask this? What did you do that? So then people won't ask that again. So it's about creating an environment where there is an open discussion. Yeah? That's how you build psychological safety. There are 3 or 4 levels. I think the first one is inclusion. The first level, do you feel good to be a member of this team? That's the first level of psychological safety. Then I think there is a point where there is a learner. Do you feel safe to learn, make mistakes and learn? Then it is contributor. And then it is the 4th one where you start questioning how the team itself is working out. So each level is when we all go through. And it's where each of us as leaders has to really build that. And that is through our own behavior, to being open, through kind of, not being judgmental. So, yeah.
I think so. I like the way you give us those 4 levels. And I think many a times the problem starts when you start asking questions first without even feeling whether you belong in the team and you inverse the pyramid, right? You just got into a place and you start asking so many questions. It just blows it out of proportion. But Krish, thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed having this conversation with you. And I hope all our HRFI members enjoyed as well. I wanted to land on time and you've been a wonderful co-pilot to help us land on time. Wonderful having you back at HRFI, and thank you for being a friend of the HR Federation of India. I think our members have significantly had takeaways from this session, and you've been ever so kind. I want to hand it back to Ankita for a formal vote of thanks.
Sahil, just before that, sir, you just, highlight about your books,
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think firstly, I don't know, many of you may have read it, but I wrote a book called Catalyze. It's just putting some of the newer things, newer concepts like positive psychology in HR. And also all my experiences over these 40 years from, Unilever, Airtel, Infosys, everything together. I think you guys should read it. Only thing is, all the thing that I get out of this book goes to charity, to a charity called Diya Ghar Matram, which is run by my friend Sujit Kumar in Chennai, Matram Foundation. So I think it's a good guide to anybody in HR to pick up on what is happening. And not only for HR, it's a good guide for any business person on understanding HR. So maybe I'd urge you to read it. If you like it, do share your thoughts, and I'll be happy to hear any feedback from you on the book. Thank you.
No, in fact, everybody should read it, So, Ankita, back to you.
Sure. First of all, I would like to share this feeling, Sahil and Krish. Everyone would have appreciated a little delayed flight. I mean, I guess everyone was praying for it. So we have such a good pilot and a co-pilot, so we would actually preferred that. I guess everyone was praying for it. I'm quite sure that along with LOC, we will keep remembering about AOC and implement that. And we would definitely utilize this weekend, many of us are bullish about it, in this 2x2 quadrant that you have given us the understanding for actually building ourselves for tomorrow. So it was amazing listening to both of you. I think Saturday thought it. We would like to thank our co-partner at Sharp HRD Services. We'll take a few seconds also to run their video. So I'll quickly do that. Sahil, can you confirm if the screen is visible?
Yes, Ankita,
Yeah.
we can hear the sound as well.
Thanks. So sad but true, that brings us to the end. Thank you so much, Krish ji, for all the information and the suggestions you have given, and especially for sharing the thoughts on your book, because I think that's for audio listeners like us or audio learner like us, it helps. So thanks a ton. Thank you so much, Sahil, once again. Thank you, Raushab ji, for helping us with such an industry stalwarts and to learn from them. And thanks each one of the HRFI member. I think with that, over to Raushab for the